You might have heard about the case of the Kentucky off sheriff who shot at a judge. Well, now there's some there's now the very latest ever since that incident happened. Tonight, you are going to see new video which was obtained by Inside Edition, all about what happened when that sheriff. All about what happened. Well, it was basically a lip syncing card. This happened 6 years ago. 6 years ago, you might have seen this. This is a video for the very first time not seeing it in over 6 years. So let's just take a look.
It's shocking video of a local Kentucky sheriff who's been charged with shooting a judge to death. In the video obtained by Inside Edition, you can see the accused sheriff lip-syncing with his daughter inside his patrol car. She's in the back seat wearing an orange t-shirt. Now the choice of songs is raising eyebrows. It's Eric Clapton's version of Bob Marley's iconic I Shot the Sheriff. When they're finished, they break out into I Fought the Law. Sheriff Sean Steins faces charges of shooting Judge Kevin Mullins inside his chambers in the town of Whitewater, Kentucky. No motive is known. Now the sheriff who once sang I Shot the Sheriff stands accused of shooting the judge.
The sheriff and the judge were said to be fighting right before the gun went off. Investigators were trying to figure out what that argument was about.
I lip sync my daughter and I don't know what to do. I lip sync my daughter and I need some common sense. Okay, if you want some common sense, we're gonna give you some common sense right now. What the fuck were you thinking, man? You're a sheriff. Doing shit like this with your daughter? A fucking role model? Give me a break. Looks like he fought the law and the law lost. Okay? Must be covering up something very serious that he's actively involved in. Looks like it. Judge had used to comply with the lawful police commands. Bro, this is insane. There's rumor going around the judge was doing nasty things with the sheriff's daughter. Okay. No correction, am I? Oh, was the sheriff less? I mean, you're kind of a crazy person, aren't you, making some crazy shit like this? Well, it was ignored. Deputy's abusing woman in streamer, so
there are new details in an investigation out of Letcher County, Kentucky, after a judge was fatally shot in his chambers, allegedly by the county sheriff. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm John Jenko. Kentucky State Police say that happened in the Letcher County Courthouse in Whitesburg yesterday. Investigators report that 54-year-old District Judge Kevin Mullins was shot after an argument inside the courthouse. State Police say the 43-year-old Letcher County Sheriff Sean Steins was the shooter. He is in custody, charged with first-degree murder. News Channel 11's Ansley Daniel is live from Kentucky where that investigation is ongoing. Ansley, what's the latest information to come out of this case?
Well, John, we've been here in Whitesburg all morning, and it is pretty quiet in this small mountain town. However, what happened inside of this closed courthouse yesterday is certainly the talk of the town. Now, those new allegations absolutely just came into our newsroom, so we're still digesting those ourselves, and I'm sure the folks around here are doing the same. Now, that federal lawsuit was filed Monday, and it alleges that a Letcher County Sheriff's deputy repeatedly sexually abused a woman in those very same chambers. Now, that woman claims that the former deputy, named as Ben Fields, forced her to have sexual relations for 6 months in exchange for staying out of jail. Now, Fields did plead guilty to raping the prisoner while she was on home arrest. He was sentenced to jail on charges of rape, sodomy, perjury, and tampering with evidence. But the lawsuit accuses the sheriff, Sean Mickey Steins, of deliberate indifference in failing to adequately train and supervise fields. Now, Steins is being held in the Leslie County Jail. It's unclear when or where he will appear in court, and it's also unclear when this courthouse will reopen. Live in Whitesburg, Ansley Daniel, News Channel 11.
Ansley, thank you. This is a developing story. You can read the latest on the investigation on our website. That's WJHL.com.
And this is still an on-developing story for this broadcast. If there's any new details, we'll let you know. But still, I mean, I don't want to go, officer. I don't want to go to jail. Please, I'll do anything for you, officer. Would you? Anything? See, I'm pretending I'm buttoning my shirt here. Let's have sex. You can't do that crap. It's that kind of stuff right there is going to get you into a lot of trouble. And it will cost you your job. Even stuff like this. That's going to cost you your job if you don't do something about it. So what do? Follow the rules and regulations. If your supervising officer saw this, he would not keep his mouth shut. He would come forward and say, I saw it happen. I have a body cam footage to prove it. Then that person would be suspended from the force indefinitely until the investigation is ongoing. Any more developments, we'll let you know. Sliming milk. Something that a school district was unaware of until it was brought to social media. Also, train tracks, an investigation by Brian Ross. Stay with us. Going out to eat this weekend? We don't want to ruin your appetite, but we do want to let you know about food critics that are impacting their health. You know, those food critics, you read about the reviews online saying how the restaurant is it good or not? But we do want to let you know about those food critics that are impacting their health. But could these restaurant critics be affecting their own health? Take a look.
Dream job. It sounds like a dream job. Getting to eat out every night of the week at some of the greatest restaurants in the world. Yummy. But could it be too much of a good thing? Critic Frank Cohen has been writing about food for 28 years.
I used to eat things like this pasta and this New York strip and these lamb chops.
Doctors told him his job was killing him, so he's cut back to reviewing just a few restaurants a month.
Now I order more toward the healthy end, like these Madagascar wild-caught prawns.
The food critic for the Philadelphia Inquirer newspaper has been writing about the food scene here since 1998. He has eaten out thousands of times, consuming millions of calories. So how has all of that eating for a living impacted his health? Like most food critics, Craig Laban keeps his face a secret because he doesn't want restaurants to recognize him and give him special treatment.
How often do you eat out in your job?
All the time. Literally. I'm eating out 7 to 9 times a week.
Laban says there's really no way to avoid eating a ton of calories.
Over the course of a few visits to a restaurant, which is what's really required to do a full-length, in-depth review, I will eat everything on the menu. I can easily taste 30 to 40 things on a menu.
Laban says he walks his dog 5 miles a day and rides his bike to his office, all so he can keep on eating.
For doing that for 28 years, have you noticed that it's taken a toll on your health and on your body?
It's a constant challenge.
It's a constant challenge. I mean, all these food critics are going to be watching this broadcast or going to their doctors and saying, well, I'm just going to ignore my health. I don't care what the doctor says. You need to start caring what your doctor says. Your doctor tells you stop doing these food reviews, stop being a food critic. You better listen to your doctor. Or cut back on fewer calories. Don't eat anything off the menu. Now look, y'all are food critics out there. I'm not shaming you. I mean, hell, I never met a food critic in my life. Even if I did, it'd be the first for this broadcast. You don't have to eat the whole plate, but such a bad job. I mean, shaming all these stinking food review people who just want to sit there and start. There we go. That's good. And start shaming everybody here. You need to do your job. You need to make sure not only to just review the food, but you also need to look out for your health. Cut back on fewer calories. Don't eat anything off the whole menu. Start cutting back. Don't be eating that like just do your food reviews like once a month. Once a month, do those food reviews. Pick one restaurant, 1 month. Make a list. And then silence yourself for the rest of the time. Then the next month, you go back. It's a pattern. Use that pattern to realize to think about your health. And even then, you won't even think about making that trip to the office, to the doctor's office. Take a look at this picture. It is so disgusting to see. You think that's pink gravy? Clumpy gravy? What do you think this is? Is this gravy or clumpy gravy? Wrong answer. It's not gravy. It's strawberry milk. Think about this. Think about this case scenario. Try imagining this case scenario. You're at lunch, okay? And you have strawberry milk with your lunch at school. And yet, you as a parent get a phone call from your child saying that you feel sick, I'm going to the hospital, this, that, and third. Then you find out as a parent that it was all clumpy by all the social media views. Well, one school district you're about to see had that problem. And you'll see video footage that was taken from the child's cell phone. And I have some choice words for those teenagers. Those kids are the ones I just post about stuff like this. So, take a look.
Look at this.
I was grossed out. My stomach turned.
It's a screenshot
Oh,
from a Facebook post, getting lots of attention online.
I was like, oh yeah, this needs to get out there, so people know if your kid is having a stomach ache or something, this might be what's going on.
Wednesday at lunchtime,
it's sloppy.
Leanne Trevino's son sent her a video of the True Moose strawberry milk served in SAISD.
It's slimy. He was like, hey mom, I might have accidentally drank some spoiled milk, strawberry milk.
She said his throat started to hurt. He didn't take another gulp. A short time later, Leanne gets a call from her daughter, who goes to school in NISD.
She calls me and she's like, when I get home, can you please take me to the hospital? And I was like, okay, well, what's wrong? She's like, my stomach hurts really, really bad.
She quickly learned her children drank the same milk.
She started telling the doctor about some strawberry milk that she had. And she was like, it was kind of clumpy, and a lot of other kids were complaining about the milk, but it was just the strawberry milk.
Her post on Facebook with hundreds of comments and shares shows more parents describing a similar situation.
You just put it in his mouth.
There was a lot of stories or a lot of kids that were coming out sick, and I guess all surrounding the same milk.
NISD tells us all 130 campuses stopped serving the milk as a precaution. SAISD did the same. Both districts say the milk was not expired. Tonight, the milk manufacturer is responding. They tell us all milk produced by TrueMoo is quality checked and tested before it leaves the plant and kept to proper temperatures up to delivery. They're working with the schools to identify the cause of the issue and support any corrective action necessary.
Other schools mentioned in the comments on that social media post were NEISD and IDEA public schools. We reached out to both. They tell us they do not use Oak Farms milk. And in case you're wondering, the manufacturer tells us their milk sold in retail stores has had no reports whatsoever of anyone being affected. Reporting live north of downtown, Alicia Nieves, KEN 5.
I got some choice words. When we come back, you'll get to hear those words. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Not only do I have some choice words to say, but I have some common sense to raise. Look, I'm glad that you alerted this to social media. You kids out there, I'm glad you really alerted this to social media. But did you talk to the school staff before letting the public know? If you have a problem with your lunch, you should talk to the school first before you start doing what you think is right. Because stuff like this will not only make you a hero, I mean, look, I get it. You're concerned about the school lunch and how, it makes you unhealthy. We talked about these lunch issues before. This one would take the cake of spoiled milk. Just look at these comments. 5.8 thousand views. It's not just the milk, it's the food. Children in the South Side are getting stomach issues as well. True news always expired. If you know, you know. That's why my kids never eat at school. This reminds me of Fall 4 where the government gave the school pink slime for the students to eat in exchange for funds for the school. This country sends money to Israel and all around the world, but they can't get the kids good milk. Half the stuff you bought in the grocery store is killing you. The reason this product from the stores was affected because it was a different product, not skim milk, which is required in schools. They're just trying to cover their butts. Good thing again, my friend. All sanitary independent school districts in the past couple of years, it seems like the food was gross or expired. Someone forgot to put the milk there. The lunch in schools is horrible. My kids say it like torture food. They never eat there. Someone forgot to put the milk there. Well, they probably did. Here's some common sense for you. I'm glad that you want to tell people about this. Talk to your parents. And parents, talk to the school. Don't go take matters in your own hands. You're going to start missing the mark. And not only that, people will start to respond to you not saying thank you, but then telling stories. But school districts will come to you saying, hey, you missed the mark here, this, that, and the third. And the mark that you missed is like this, okay? You probably don't know the facts. If you worked at the school lunch, you would know. And hey, when I was growing up, when I ate the school lunch, that was all. But nowadays, I see people going to places like Domino's, the Dollar General across the street from the school, Whataburger, Burger King, McDonald's, getting DoorDash delivered to the school, not knowing that it's a safety issue. School is not a country club. Look. I get it. You guys out there, look, I get y'all. Y'all want to sit there and say, like, I hate the school lunch. It tastes like crap. They feed us nothing but dirt. They don't feed us properly. They're trying to teach you good, healthy habits. I know you don't believe me. I sometimes eat at home and sometimes eat. I eat sometimes at home and I sometimes eat at lunch. I mean, people may go on social media and say, well, school lunch tastes like garbage, tastes like crap and all. That's their opinion. But it's what they feed you. And people sit there and say, well, we have very few complaints. Those complaints are from the kids. Maybe because they haven't tasted. Maybe they listen to their friends saying, hey, if I were you, I would not recommend eating that lunch. I recommend you go to McDonald's or get something from DoorDash. Which is literally outside food. That is literally just outside food. If it was, I mean, that's what kids are doing nowadays. It's exactly what kids are doing these days. What they're doing is just wasting their money. Going in their cars and going to food places, which is a huge safety issue. That's why there's closed campus involved. Parents, be aware of what's going on with your child's lunch. And if your child starts to eat at lunch or eat at home, have them bring lunch from home. That way they won't have to spend their money. Bring a lunch in a lunchbox. Alright? It's just that simple. Your kids never eat that school lunch? Well, here. Buy a lunchbox. Pack a lunch. Have them take it to school. Kids, don't get in your cars and go into the food places. Safety concern. We don't want any children in accidents. None of it. No accidents happening. No ifs, ands, buts, or excuses. Because everyone had those in their excuses and they think no one cares. Start caring. You have to understand where people are coming from here. And look, I get it here. Nobody wants to do this, and the third, but it's what we have to do. We get it. Try to understand. You don't like the school lunch? Don't eat it. Just eat it home. Don't go doing things you don't take matters in your own hands and say to yourself, well, I'm gonna go get some McDonald's. Hopefully that'll help. They'll take your lunch and you spend money and you'll never get anything in return. Train tracks. How safe are your trains? Are the trains that you drive? So now we're going to talk about railway safety. Well, basically this investigation is all about railways. How safe are they when you're riding a train or crossing a railroad? Which you shouldn't be. Because we're about to show you railway safety can be very dangerous. But you're going to learn it anyway. So as we deal with safety break. Here's Brian Ross.
Who would expect two trains to be on the same track coming head on head? And all of a sudden, a conductor ran out saying, brace yourself. It just impacted and lights went off. It was real loud.
I need rescue, I need fire, I need everybody. What's the problem? There's an Amtrak train that just blew up.
On the night of February 16th, in the Washington suburb of Silver Spring, a Maryland commuter train somehow missed a stop signal and slammed into Amtrak's Capital Limited, turning this commuter rail car into a blazing death trap for 9 people.
And I was pulling on the doors, and everybody behind me talking about open the doors, and I'm screaming back saying I can't.
Rodney Crawford was one of a group of young people riding home from a job training program. Almost everyone in Crawford's group survived the initial crash, but unable to find or to operate complicated emergency exits, not everyone survived the fire that followed.
I couldn't breathe. I just tried to do everything I could to open the doors, and I was banging on the windows, and the windows were so thick that you couldn't get through them.
Crawford was lucky. He crawled through a hole he found ripped in the floor. But 7 of Crawford's friends and 2 crew members who stayed at windows that could resist bullets but not be easily opened, and at doors electrically locked for safety, those 9 never got out, as firemen with axes and nearby residents with stones, including Michelle Williams, could do nothing to help.
The one that I remember the most vividly was a young girl, and she had her fists closed, and she was just banging on the window and just screaming, help me, please help me. And I banged on the window, I tried pulling it, I tried the stripping around the window, and nothing would work. And I could actually see the car itself filling up with smoke. And it just got to the point I couldn't see her anymore.
And what happened that night in Silver Spring, according to federal safety investigators, was the result of years and years of safety warnings being ignored.
And now, in the wake of that accident, a 3-month joint investigation by Primetime Live and U.S. News and World Report has raised serious safety questions about much of the nation's rail network, passenger and freight, and about the Federal Railroad Administration, the government agency that is supposed to regulate railroads.
The railroads say they have an excellent safety record over the past 10 years. But in our investigation, we found long-standing problems with commuter rail emergency exits, an outdated system of train signals and controls.
It's like to keep your eyes open.
Commuter engineers admitting to falling asleep at the switch.
This is an FRA violation.
And, as our undercover cameras documented, shoddy inspection of big freight trains that again and again move out on America's rails, often on the same tracks with passenger trains.
The bottom line is the results have not been there for the American people.
James Hall is the chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board, which makes safety recommendations not only for airlines, for which it is best known, but also for the nation's railroads.
If those passenger rail cars traveled at 30,000 feet in the air, I assure you the American public would have long ago demanded the safety standards that we're now trying to get put in place.
The firemen come to a burning car. He hits that with an axe and it bounces off.
Bill Pugh, who until 1991 headed up the Safety Board's railroad section, took us on an unsettling tour at Washington's Union Station.
Then you gotta find a window.
Going through the same kind of cars on the very same railroad involved in last February's fatal accident.
See that?
As heavy as they are, Pugh says he never rides in the front or rear cars of commuter trains because most don't have strong enough corner posts.
So if something's coming in and hits this,
You're gonna take that out.
that's going to go out.
Take the here. This is going to go.
This will just crumple up.
Yeah, then you're gonna tear the side out of the car.
That's what happened when 7 people were killed in an Indiana commuter train crash 3 years ago. But stronger corner posts are still not required.
In emergency, people usually will go to the door they came in.
And then Pugh showed us why some of the people killed in Silver Spring got trapped at the train's doors. There's no way to know the emergency door release is back inside the car. No signs, no markings. And there's certainly no way to force the door open.
How about if I hit that? What if I kick it?
Nope.
Really?
It's not gonna go.
Huh?
It's not gonna go.
You can't get out.
You can't get out. You gotta know enough to go back inside and open them. Open that.
Pugh says since 1978, the Safety Board has been trying to get the railroads to change all this without success.
You gotta know that this door is here.
And then it takes a screwdriver or a quarter to get the panel open.
And if you don't have one, you're gonna have to borrow one or something. And then you gotta turn.
Now, how do you know which handle to pull?
Yeah. Well,
That says.
see, that's the problem. You got to understand.
Mr. Pugh, if there are no lights here,
Yeah, you're not gonna see it.
And Pugh says it's pretty much the same basic design on most commuter rail cars in this country.
Our American people deserve the safest rail industry in the world, and that's what they're getting.
Jolene Molatoris is the administrator of the Federal Railroad Administration, the very agency that for years has failed to turn dozens of safety recommendations into safety regulations. But Molatoris says it's a different agency since she was appointed by President Clinton, and she's been praised by both the industry and rail unions.
No matter what, safety has to be number one.
what happened then in Silver Spring?
That was a tragic incident. That's why we issued Emergency Order 20, which required that every commuter agency examine all their windows and all their identification markers. And as we speak, all of those windows have been examined and new markers have been put on everything.
But that was not entirely true. On the same day last month, we talked with Molatoris. The new window markings required for rescue crews were nowhere to be seen on many Philadelphia area SEPTA trains and on many New York Metro North trains. Molatoris later told us all the required signs would be in place on trains by the time of tonight's report.
No.
And as for the difficulty in getting train doors open, Molatoris' emergency order makes no mention of that problem at all. What do you say about that? There's no marking on that door.
That's not acceptable.
But
They're
there are
too
trains
difficult.
that roll out every day. You could order tomorrow morning an end to that, couldn't you?
We are going to order a list of the best safety practices in the country
Why not
for
right now?
everyone.
What's the delay?
We are evaluating every plan and every procedure from all the commuters in the country.
But talk of evaluations and plans is just the kind of talk heard from federal railroad regulators for years. For example, after an Amtrak train ran off a damaged bridge, killing 47 people, there was lots of talk about a system of bridge sensors. But 3 years later, sensors are still not required. There's also been lots of talk, but still no change in the long hours and split shifts train engineers on many lines are working, including this Boston commuter train engineer, who told Prime Time that despite naps between his morning and evening shifts, he still has a hard time staying awake.
You're not off driving the train. You wake up and you know, you're scared. And a lot can happen in a couple of seconds when you're going 70 miles an hour.
And some changes have been for the worse.
All aboard.
In the heyday of train traffic, there was an automatic braking system that kept trains from running through signals and colliding. But because of its expense, the railroads largely dismantled the system in the 1950s. The Federal Railroad Administrator says, while she favors such a system today in principle, its cost remains very much a factor.
Part of our responsibility as a rulemaker is to not only look at safety, but also look at the investment implications for the industry. That's part of the rulemaking process.
Safety was the only issue, I thought.
It's the number one issue, but any rulemaker must evaluate the impact on the industry. That's part of our responsibility. Absolutely.
But federal safety investigators say there have been hundreds of train wrecks which would not have happened if safety measures had been adopted and if trains were better inspected. Do you have enough inspectors?
We have a great team of inspectors.
How many?
400.
That's the same number of inspectors there were in 1978, despite a huge increase in train traffic since then. Have you asked for more?
We haven't.
Why not?
What we believe is that everybody in the industry becomes a partner in this. It's more than just inspections.
Oh my, what do we got here?
So, in the final step of our investigation, to see what was and what was not being inspected, we went undercover at the Bensonville freight train yard outside Chicago, run by the Soo Line.
Bangy, bangy, bang. The car is destroying itself.
Accompanied by a retired railroad carman and active union member, Don Julin, who says neither federal nor railroad company safety inspectors are doing their job.
We got the L2 brake shoe broken.
Julin took us down the line of a 77-car train, which supposedly had already been inspected. But Julin found 7 cars with a variety of violations, including, most serious, a broken wheel bearing, which safety experts say could cause the car to jump the tracks.
It's not supposed to move at all. That move free enough for you? Backing cover's loose, the grease is gonna leak out, bearings will bind up, and then you better be wearing your earplugs because I think there's gonna be a big crash.
The record for safety is, over the last 10 years has been just excellent.
We showed what we found to Pat Pender, Vice President of Operations for Soo Line and its parent company, Canadian Pacific. Is that a problem?
If indeed that was a train that was leaving Bensonville, departing for the main line, then there are defects there that we should have picked up.
Why didn't you? And why didn't federal rail inspectors pick up any of those defects?
Federal rail inspectors are not in all the yards all the time.
In fact, when the manager of the Bensonville yard, Jim Johnson, was brought in to see our tape, he said our inspection was too tough. The federal inspectors don't do that?
No, sir. If you look underneath
Maybe
the car,
they should. Is that possible?
I don't think so. I don't think that the rail industry would be able to move freight if somebody inspected a train the way this gentleman inspects a train.
The train we inspected rolled out that night last month with defects that our safety experts say could be quite risky. The Soo Line later told us it believes any brake problems we found would have been caught before the train left, but that other defects we spotted did in fact go undetected. And while the train made its trip to Kansas City without any reported incident, It was clearly in a condition far from the stated goals of the Federal Railroad Administrator.
This administration is focused on zero tolerance for any safety hazard.
Zero tolerance.
Zero tolerance.
The cost of added safety measures to achieve that goal has so far been too high for the railroads. But as was made clear in Silver Spring this February, the cost of not achieving that goal has also been very high.
I should have died because there was nowhere to go. There was nowhere to run.
We stood there in the snow listening to these people scream, and then all of a sudden, there was just silence.
There is some good news. Amtrak has voluntarily adopted many of the train's safety recommendations. Commuter railroads promise they'll take action on some of these problems soon.
And it won't be very soon enough. So next time you know about railway safety, try and know those exits, even when you're on the bus. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. A couple years ago, we brought you the story of Jehovah's Witnesses, and by the name of Erica Garza, who accused her attacker of sexually abusing from a... She said she was being sexually abused by members of the Jehovah's Witness. But this story you're about to see is very different. We also told you the story about the Catholic Church by the name of Father Ninciano, who sexually abused one man years ago. Now it turns out there's a pastor preying on young men by the name of L.R. Davis. They say Davis exerts tremendous influence and control over members of his fundamentalist church, and uses his power to seduce people emotionally and sexually. Tonight, you're going to hear the allegations that are made by these people. They say he takes the money, he takes the dignity, and he takes advantage of you. As you'll hear in this exclusive interview with Chris Wallace, you'll get to hear him admit to it or deny it. Here's Chris Wallace.
Well, something good is going to happen. Something good is in store.
It's Sunday morning at the Christian Fellowship Church in Waukegan, Illinois.
Praise the Lord.
And as usual, Pastor L.R. Davis is leading his congregation. A former grocery worker with a 6th grade education, Davis is the self-proclaimed bishop of this ministry.
We have a fight to fight this morning because we're on God's side, amen. And if we're on God's side, we must fight the fight.
Pastor Davis has put together quite a force to fight that fight. He says he has 10,000 followers and an annual budget of $1.5 million, with churches outside several Navy bases, not only in Waukegan, but also San Diego, Orlando, and Norfolk, Virginia. His core membership, sailors and trainees from those naval stations, who often come to see Davis as a kind of prophet. But over more than 20 years, a small, steady stream of Davis's followers has come to see him as something else, a pastor preying on young men. They say he takes their money.
$200, $400, $600 a month coming from a single Navy member.
They say he takes their families.
Your family was now the family of Christ. That's all the family you were supposed to have.
They say he even takes their bodies.
My feelings about L.R. Davis are all quite very numb.
This is the Christian Fellowship Servicemen Center in North Chicago, where since 1978, Pastor Davis has offered free food and games in a warm, friendly setting. It is just a few hundred feet from the main gate of the Great Lakes Naval Training Center, where thousands of recruits come each year for Navy boot camp. It is an ideal situation for Pastor Davis to meet young men. Ex-followers say Davis takes advantage of the situation at the Servicemen's Center to establish a kind of psychological control over sailors, a control they say he uses to press some of them into homosexual relations. Scott Morehouse was 22 when he met Davis in 1979.
We believe wholly that he is speaking the Word of God, that he is close to God as though God himself would be speaking to us.
The pastor tells young men who join his ministry they must live for God, but by Davis's rules. Ex-members say that can mean living jammed together in church-run apartments, giving their money to the ministry. And even though Davis is married, ex-members say he often insists they avoid relations with women. Steve Belair's was church secretary for 13 years.
Whatever the ministry demanded, that came first, no matter what. That came first over my personal needs. It came first over any personal relationships I might have with my family, over everything.
Ex-members say Davis maintains this tight control by intimidation, threatening some people who leave his church with death and damnation. Davis, who said he was reluctant to discuss these allegations, flatly denied this charge, along with all the others.
Have you ever threatened any member of your church who left here? Threatened that they would die? Threatened that they would go to hell?
Never. Never.
But we asked Davis about a letter he sent last year to one ex-member who was making charges against him. Davis wrote, God would not allow anyone to do his prophets harm, and you will die because of what you've done.
So you are saying that because of what he has said about you,
Is a sin unto death. Yes, I did.
it is a sin unto death.
Yes, it is.
He will go to hell.
That's right.
Isn't that a pretty fearsome threat for you to make?
That wasn't a threat. That is a statement from the Word of God.
But all these allegations are only a prelude to the most damaging charge of all, a charge made throughout Davis's career. But the ultimate way he uses his control over his young followers is to pressure them to have sex.
What does your church say about homosexuality?
It's wrong to be homosexual.
Is it a sin?
It is a sin. It's a sin unto death.
Pastor Davis, have you ever engaged in a homosexual act with any member of your church?
No, I have not. Never. That would make me a homosexual.
We were alone in his car, and he said he wanted to spend some time with me alone.
Scott Morehouse is one of many ex-members who say Davis is lying. He says the pastor pushed him to have sex a few months after they met.
It was very strange and confusing. I thought at the time that Davis was trying to test me in some way, but he made his advances very plain, and it ended up where we did go to our hotel and had sex.
It was at this motel in Norfolk, Virginia, that Morehouse said he had the first of many sexual encounters with Davis. He stayed in the ministry 10 years, serving as pastor of Davis's San Diego church, in a jumble of religious conviction and personal confusion.
Did you ever say to him, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to me? Isn't it a sin?
I made it known that I didn't want to. And he said, well, if you don't, you'll have to leave the church. Our feelings, our belief was that he was of God, and it was such a strong control there that I allowed it, and I know that others have allowed it to happen also.
How many others? We found more than 20 young men making the same shocking charge against the pastor in sworn statements and interviews with us. Some of them were sailors who, by admitting homosexual encounters with Davis, risked immediate discharge from the Navy. We were astonished to hear the same story again and again, across the years and across the country. A preacher using his position to take advantage of his followers.
He took off all his clothes. Don was under shorts. Asked me to rub his
rubbing his back, and he started asking me to go lower and lower.
Lower, so I massaged his back lower. And when he kept saying lower, it started to hit me.
He said, what would you do if I got you? You'd do if I was to get you. What'd you do if I was to get you in the tail?
He would tell you that it's nothing more than masturbation.
Masturbation or something like that. That is not wrong.
And had sex between two men. It was okay, even in the eyes of God, as long as there was no love involved.
He can have morning services on Sunday, get up and preach the wrath and the terror of God, go to his offices, have sex with me or someone else, and go back and preach a second service.
Pastor Davis, we have talked to so many people, many of them with no connections to each other, making the same charges that you either seduced them or that you attempted to seduce them?
I have no answer why that they're doing it, only the fact that it is not true, it never happened, and you talking of a few people that have left this ministry that are making...
It's not a few. There are more than 20 witnesses
You mean 20
who have
people?
come forward.
Would you call 20 people a lot out of thousands of people?
Yeah, I would call 20 people a lot.
Well...
You don't think it's unusual that 20 people over the course of years would say that you've made homosexual advances on them?
No, I do not.
Pastor Davis says all his accusers have connections to each other, and that their common link is racism. He has always taken a progressive line on race relations. He says the accusations have been an effort to destroy that work.
Are you saying this is some conspiracy?
Yes, sir. I really feel that it is. Good morning. This is just one of the very unpopular things that can scar and destroy a minister. And it's not destroyed me, because it's not true.
Indeed, Davis has not been destroyed, despite accusations going back more than 20 years. In the late 60s, he left his church in Arkansas amid charges he seduced students at this Bible college. In 1979, an Illinois judge issued an emergency order removing Davis as a probation supervisor after a young man in his custody said Davis demanded sex. In 1982, the Navy declared the Christian Fellowship off limits after hearing accounts of sexual abuse from ex-sailors, but the ban has since been lifted. And in 1983, Davis was tried on a criminal charge of having sex with a minor. He was acquitted.
I don't like the fact that this man is able to stay out there in Waukegan, hide behind a religious organization, and do the things he's done. I don't like it, and I hope maybe it'll stop someday.
Former U.S. Attorney Dan Webb and his colleague Steve Molo have spent months investigating Davis. They represent reporter Adrian Drebb, who starting in 1980 wrote a series of exposés about the ministry for the Waukegan News-Sun and has been locked in a legal battle with Davis ever since. Attorney Webb says the reason the pastor has never been convicted is that cases end up being one person's word against another's.
The things that he does, which is to psychologically overpower and seduce sexually young men, disturb young men, doesn't necessarily lead itself to developing an abundance of evidence. It's hard to prove. These are difficult cases.
Whatever the reason, the Christian Fellowship has not only stayed in operation, it has flourished. And his accusers say Davis hasn't changed either. In fact, the most chilling accusation we heard against him involved a case over the last 3 years.
While most of the Christian Fellowship's churches are near naval bases, Pastor Davis also set up a mission in Tijuana, Mexico. He came here to the local tourist strip looking for new followers. He approached young men, and at least one boy, who was only 13 years old.
Enrique, as we'll call him, remembers meeting Pastor Davis in 1987.
I didn't know nothing, I just knew that he was a man of God and everything he was telling me was true.
Enrique says Davis brought him to Waukegan to work at church headquarters. Within weeks, he says the pastor pressured and finally persuaded him to have sex, even though Enrique was only 13.
He turned everything around. He betrayed me as far as a friend, because I mean, you don't do stuff like that to a friend.
And how often did this happen?
It was like if I was his spouse.
You mean you belonged?
Yeah.
And it went on for how long?
For like 2 years.
Do you know this person? We are not going to use his name because he's still a minor. But do you know that person?
Yes, I do.
Who is he?
It's a young man that is from Tijuana, Mexico, and San Diego, California.
This young boy says that you had sex repeatedly with him 3 years ago when he was 13 years old. In fact, that you had sex with him in this very room.
Well, you know, it's really amazing that this same young man gave a statement on tape, and a written statement, and we have, that nothing ever occurred immoral or wrong. We have those statements.
Davis produced a letter addressed to whom it may concern that says, "At no time have I seen homosexual acts, and Pastor Davis lives a straight life." Davis says the boy wrote the letter himself. Enrique says it was written for him, and he was ordered to sign it. What makes Enrique's case especially disturbing is that Pastor Davis has been accused of sexually abusing minors before, long before. Before Enrique was even born, there was another young boy, 14-year-old Bill Decker. The year was 1969.
He was there for us. He took us to carnivals, to fairs.
Decker says the pastor was a second father to him. His own dad was in Vietnam, and his family attended Davis's church in Pocahontas, Arkansas. But it all changed when the boys spent that Christmas Eve at Davis's house. Decker says the pastor's request for an alcohol back rub turned into something else. A memory still painful 21 years later.
I sat there with the alcohol. I looked at the bottle and I looked at him. I said, no. Scared to death. So I'm going to bed. He flipped over. It's all right, forget it. Don't settle down, it's okay, I didn't mean anything by it.
But Decker says that Davis persisted that Christmas Eve, trying to grab him and coax him into sex.
And he kept asking, come over and sleep with me, keep me warm. No. Comes his wife and kids are right in the neck. Room.
His wife and kids?
His wife was in her room, the kids were in their room. They'll come over and sleep with me, keep me warm, it's cold out. No.
Decker says he reported the incident to his mother. Davis quietly left his church. But the scars still haven't healed.
It never leaves. You always will look at people from then on. Who are you really?
But that's not true. I did not make any advances toward being Decker whatsoever.
As with all the other allegations over 20 years, Davis says the Christmas Eve incident never happened. That Decker is just another conspirator trying to destroy his ministry.
Repeat this prayer with me, Lord Jesus.
As for Davis, he vows to press on, to build a bigger church in Waukegan and new missions overseas. He says the Bible protects him.
And you shall know the truth. The truth shall make you free.
Those who've left the Christian Fellowship say the truth has set them free. Most are now married and raising families, getting a late start on the lives they say Davis denied them. Despite everything, most have kept their religious faith. And they told us they now pray for those still caught in Davis's web.
I knew he would call me a liar when I left. I knew that there would be people who I loved that were in that ministry that would never know the truth. I don't know if I could ever convince the rest of the world, but just between him and me, he knows where the truth lies.
Now, just for the record, I forgot to mention this before I started the story. Just for the record, if you're going to accuse me of saying you didn't get permission, I got permission to use the video, which was 3 weeks ago, right before we started season 8. So, PHUPDU, if you're watching this, you get a shout out. I want to say thank you for letting me use this video. And a footnote. Alan Davis died in prison while serving a 31-year sentence. He was later tried and convicted of multiple counts of criminal sexual assault and child pornography. And during his 31-year sentence, he died. And I told him, hey, can I use the video? And he said, sure, feel free to use it if you're inclined. And you can point people, you can feel free to point throughout this website, the tfcmyhelp.com, where you can, where their approach is to help anyone who's overcome contact with anything they need. You can learn more reconstructive. We also have that in link in the description below, as well as our newsletter at givemeabreak.substack.com for all the information and tips for what you need to know. And the owner's name is Phil Davis. So Phil Davis, thank you for letting me use this video, and I really hope that it will help out other people who have had these issues. So what do you think? Do you have any similar stories that could help you out here? Give me some feedback in the comment section below. We'll have your results soon on Give Me a Break. If you know the name Susan McDougal, then you might know a connection between sexual abuse and Bill Clinton. If you remember years ago, there was a conspiracy to connect Bill Clinton to sexual assault. Before Monica Lewinsky, there was also Jane Doe number 5, and now Susan McDougal. The list of women can go on. And coming up this season, the exclusive ending from the Monica Lewinsky, the famous person who had sex with Bill Clinton, and the key witness to the Ken Starr investigation. Not for the very first time, you'll get to hear her side of the story about how Bill Clinton sexually abused her. Did it ever happen? Or is it just some plain old allegation being used against the former president? I mean, that was being used against the former president, sorry. Here's Stone Phillips.
Has it occurred to you, Susan, that by not talking, by letting people continue to wonder about what she knows, is she hiding something that she may be doing a disservice to the president?
This isn't about the president. He can take care of himself. This is about what they've done to me and to my family in the course of this investigation.
It's been more than a year since Susan McDougal was caught in the Whitewater net. But unlike others, including her ex-husband, who caved and cooperated, she has remained silent. And though she has served harder time than many murderers, locked down in isolation, left in a county jail for months in spite of a judge's order that she be transferred, she says it has only stiffened her spine and her belief that prosecutor Kenneth Starr and his investigators will stop at nothing in what she calls the Whitewater witch hunt.
They cared little for the people that they stomped along the way, the people they ran over along the way to get to Bill Clinton. And that is exactly why I liken Ken Starr to a Nazi, because the end to him justified the means.
Good afternoon. Kenneth Starr, a Nazi? To understand the depth of Susan McDougal's hatred for the man who had her jailed, you have to understand the depth of her love for the woman who's been her inspiration.
I wouldn't be my mother's daughter if I didn't see this through.
Susan seems to feel that she's following in your footsteps with the stand that she has taken.
In a way, it makes me sad. And in a way, I'm very proud of her.
Susan McDougal's mother, Lorette Henley, knows all about standing firm under enormous pressure. As a teenager in Nazi-occupied Belgium, she saw firsthand how the Gestapo turned neighbor against neighbor, forcing people to lie about loved ones, who were then arrested or shot. She says her family defied them, going so far as to hide resistance fighters in their basement.
They were staying with your family?
Yes.
And if the Nazis had found them there?
We were all shot the next day.
Those lessons from the war were often told around the family dinner table in Camden, Arkansas, but never with more at stake than in September 1996, the night before Susan was scheduled to testify before a Whitewater grand jury. She'd already been convicted of fraud, and she says prosecutors were offering to lighten her 2-year sentence if she'd testify against the Clintons. But that night, she called her family together to tell them not only was she turning down the deal, she wasn't going to testify at all.
Did you try to talk her out of it?
I must admit that I did.
I said, Mom, I've told them I don't know anything they did wrong.
They want me to lie about the Clintons. I told her, I said, my goodness, I said, this sounded just like the Nazis.
She threw her hands in the air. She said, if I can stand up to them, you can stand up to this.
I told her I'll pray for her. And she left. And the next day, I turned the TV on and she was in chains.
When Susan was hauled off in chains a year ago, it was for contempt of court, ordered to jail until she agrees to answer questions from the prosecutor she likens to a Nazi.
Is it fair to compare Kenneth Starr to the Nazis? Is Starr just doing what prosecutors do every day in this country, offering leniency to those who cooperate and upping the pressure on those who don't talk?
Well, I was taught that a prosecutor's job is to seek justice. And if he is truly seeking justice, if he is truly seeking someone who has broken the law to take them to justice, perhaps what he'd want to hear is the truth.
But Ken Starr says he's not asking you to lie, just to answer questions.
No, they specifically asked me to lie.
Whitewater investigators flatly deny that. They say while Susan McDougal cannot be forced to cooperate, she must do what dozens of others have done: answer questions in a lawful investigation. But presidential aides like Matt McClarty, even Hillary Clinton herself, has gone in and testified before the grand jury. They're no fans of Ken Starr's either.
No,
But
that's
they went
true.
and they did it. Why should it be different for you?
Because I was convicted of something I didn't do. They were convicting me so that I would testify against Bill Clinton.
What exactly was she convicted of? And what more does Kenneth Starr think she knows? The Clinton-McDougal connection dates back to Clinton's earliest days in Arkansas politics. Jim and Susan, Bill and Hillary campaigned together, and they invested together in this property along the White River. The McDougals, already successful real estate developers, were giving their up-and-coming political pals, the Clintons, a chance to cash in on what they thought would be a surefire investment. You're the one who came up with the name, Whitewater.
That's true.
More than a place to live, it's a way to live, you wrote in one of the brochures. Serene, simple, and honest.
It was a beautiful place when I went to see it.
But as beautiful and promising as it seemed, by 1985, Whitewater was losing money. The lots weren't selling. And for the first time in a television interview, Susan McDougal told Dateline about the financial pressures and mounting tension between the Clintons and the McDougals over the investment. Is it true that long before there was any investigation, Bill Clinton was ready to get out of it, and Hillary said, no, we want to stay in?
Yes. That's true.
Is it true that you actually were sent over with the paperwork to see Hillary?
That's true.
What happened?
She declined to sign the paperwork to divest themselves of Whitewater.
What'd she tell you?
She said she didn't understand. She just couldn't understand it, that Jim had promised her that this was going to be something that would work. And she told me that Jim had even brought up the fact that it would pay her child's way through college. And she was very disappointed and upset about it.
Very adamant?
Yes. That conversation with her and the dealings that Jim had with her subsequently are the genesis of his great hatred and bitterness toward the Clintons.
They wanted this to work and were putting pressure on him to make it work? Hillary in particular?
Yes.
Did you feel that pressure?
I knew that Jim was upset, and that upset me because I tried to always get done what Jim wanted done.
She says as the months passed, the tension between the two couples grew. The McDougals felt the Clintons didn't appreciate how much money she and Jim were putting into Whitewater to keep it going. At one point, you went to see Hillary Clinton with a legal pad showing, this is what we've put in.
This was after we had lost everything that we had, and I was telling her, we are trying very hard to make this work, even, in difficult circumstances.
But your point was, if you think you've got money invested here,
yes.
Look what we've got invested.
Yes.
That there was a lot more at stake for you than for them.
Yes, I wanted very much for her to understand how hard we were trying.
But prosecutors say they tried too hard. In April 1986, a few months after Susan says an angry Hillary Clinton told her to make Whitewater work, the McDougals took out this $300,000 loan. It was arranged by Jim, but taken out in Susan's name because the money was from a government-backed program to help women in small business. It was fraud, prosecutors say, because some of that money was diverted illegally to pay bills for Whitewater. Susan insists she did nothing wrong and is appealing her conviction. But you signed for that $300,000 loan.
Yes, I signed for many loans during the course of my marriage.
Because Jim McDougal told you to do it?
Yes.
And so you did it?
Absolutely. I would have done anything Jim asked me to do because, in my mind at that time, he was utterly trustworthy.
The crucial question in the Whitewater investigation is whether Bill Clinton, then governor of Arkansas, was also involved in the loan. Clinton denies it.
No.
And for years, Jim McDougal backed him up. But in this interview last April, McDougal told Dateline he had changed his story.
I just got sick and tired of lying for the fellow.
He told us about a key meeting with David Hale, the man who issued the loan. Was Bill Clinton there? We were together at Casa Grande, yes.
There with David Hale?
Yes.
Talking about a loan?
Yes.
For Susan McDougal?
Yes.
Should we believe Jim McDougal?
I can tell you that the David Hale story, which has now become the Jim McDougal story since he was convicted in the trial, is not true.
And what about Jim McDougal's suggestion, first reported in the New Yorker magazine, that Susan is protecting the president because she may have had an affair with him? She says there's no truth to that either.
It's rank speculation on his part.
Oh, it's worse than that. It's totally made up.
How hurtful has it been to you?
It has not been hurtful to me because I know where it came from. I knew how angry Jim was with me, that I would not cooperate in the sense of telling that same David Hale story that he told. I'm sure that when I wouldn't say yes to all of that, he felt betrayed. And the real thing I feel when I hear it is, God, Jim, how did we come to this? How did we come to this, the two of us?
She denies the affair. But what about the key question Whitewater prosecutors are dying to ask her under oath about Bill Clinton and that illegal loan?
Can you say that you never talked to Bill Clinton about that loan?
I'm not going to answer any questions that might help Kenneth Starr in his investigation.
For more than a year, she has stood her ground behind bars, refusing to answer those questions. She says she is standing on principle, unwilling to lie. But prosecutors say she's a convicted criminal who has engaged in a pattern of deceit, all too willing to lie on things as big as that $300,000 loan and as small as a string of job applications introduced as evidence at her sentencing.
I want to hear your explanation, Susan, for something that the prosecutors point to as evidence that you have lied to hide things.
Okay.
The application for your first job after you left Arkansas to try to make a fresh start. You wrote from 1976 to 1988 you worked for Tucker Smith McDonald. There's no such entity, no such company, is there?
I made up the company that I worked for.
She even made up the company address, listing the house where Jim McDougal was living. And her supervisor? Instead of Jim McDougal, she put J. McDonald. There were also lies on this application in Michigan and this one for a job in Tennessee.
I didn't put half the things I had done because I was afraid I couldn't get a job if I did.
Well, it's not about whether you exaggerated up or down, Susan. It's about whether you told the truth. It's about whether you told the truth on the application.
That's true. That's true. I needed a job very badly. And to do typing and to do filing and just to do simple things. It was the simplest job I could get so that I could just eat, pay my bills, and live a normal life that I hadn't lived in a long time.
The prosecutors say the way you did it just shows deceit.
But I'll tell you, I was very proud of the fact at the sentencing hearing that the very worst thing they could say about me, the very worst thing the prosecutors could say about me was that I had made a bad resume. I walked out of that courtroom with my head so high.
And when the Whitewater investigation is finally over, Susan McDougal says Bill Clinton should hold his head high too.
If you cross paths with Bill Clinton in Arkansas, years down the road, what will you say to him?
I would say congratulations for making it. That someone can work so hard and someone from Arkansas can get to where he got. I'm glad of that. I hope it's true for all of us.
Does Bill Clinton owe you a thank you for the stance that you have taken?
I don't know. I don't really, this is really about me, you know?
Did you expect a pardon?
No. In fact, I don't want a pardon. I didn't do anything wrong. I feel like a pardon is saying, well, you did this, and it's okay. You know, I do not want a pardon. Not interested. Not asking for one, not accepting one.
Your family says you could make 2 phone calls. One to the prosecutors, one to a publisher. And you'd be free, and you'd be rich. Are those phone calls you'll ever make?
No. No, I've put in a year of my life about something I believe so strongly in, that this man is really wrong in what he's doing. And I will never, ever be sorry for what I've done.
The White House declined to comment on our interview and referred us to the Clintons' private attorney, David Kendall. He also declined to comment. As for Susan McDougal, She has a long road ahead. Even when she finishes her jail time for contempt, she still faces 2 years in federal prison for her fraud conviction involving that $300,000 loan.
Wow. It comes to show to you, fraud and Bill Clinton don't mix. Just really don't mix. We'll be right back. Now for a Give Me a Break follow-up. Last season, we did a whole special all about jaywalking. How it's dangerous, how it's illegal. Now, California has now made it legal to jaywalk, meaning decriminalizing jaywalking, meaning you can't be punished for crossing the street. It happened in Texas, but in California. There's a second update to this story, and we'll tell you about that shortly. So, but first, here's Kimberly Chang.
So why don't we just take a deep breath, calm down. If someone needs to run across the street really quickly instead of walking all the way to the crosswalk, just let them run across. I think it makes drivers more aware.
This North Hollywood bicyclist hopes the new law will cause drivers to slow down. This pedestrian disagrees.
It might be a bad move because it's going to encourage people to cross a busy street like this, maybe in a dangerous situation.
Governor Gavin Newsom signed the Freedom to Walk Act, which would legalize jaywalking, allowing people to cross outside an intersection or crosswalk if it's safe to do so. Under the new law, officers can still issue citations for jaywalkers if a reasonably careful person would realize that there was an immediate danger of a collision with a moving vehicle.
Jaywalking laws that we have on the books right now are disproportionately enforced against Black Californians, against poor people. They're disproportionately enforced in neighborhoods that have suffered from inadequate infrastructure over the years.
Supporters of the law say under-resourced communities often don't have adequate pedestrian crosswalks compared to wealthier areas. Laura McCamey with the organization CalBike.
I don't think people will rush out in the streets now because they won't get a ticket. Nobody wants to be hit by a car.
Assemblymember Phil Ting pushed to legalize the Freedom to Walk Act. Ting argued that expensive tickets and unnecessary confrontations with police disproportionately affected lower-income communities and people of color. Data compiled by the California Racial and Identity Profiling Act from 2018 to 2020 showed that Black Californians were stopped for jaywalking up to 4.5 times more than white residents, depending on the community.
It's actually going to increase safety especially for people in disadvantaged communities, because they're going to be subject to less police harassment.
But opponents of the law expressed concern. The California Sheriff's Association said it could lead to more confusion and problems on the road. According to the Governor's Highway Safety Association, California had the most pedestrian deaths in the country. Roughly 950 fatalities were reported in 2021.
There's been several times just driving down the street where someone rushes out in front of you thinking that they can make it to the other side.
The law goes into effect January 1st. In North Hollywood, Kimberly Chang, KTLA 5 News.
Now, this was last year. Now, that was last year. Now there's more developments. Just recently here in Fire Bluff, there was a person that posted on a Facebook group around the bluff saying all about parents crossing the street. Well, I happen to just put in all caps saying no jaywalking. This was a post from Facebook. It says, quote, "We have crosswalks and crossing guards at our schools for a reason. Shame on all the parents that just cut across on Purdue when there's a lot of moving traffic. Especially shame on the parent that was holding the baby and walked right in front of me while I was moving." I put comments in all caps, no jaywalking. It is illegal. It is illegal here in the state of Texas. You could be fined. What are crossing guards doing? Not a goddamn thing. Look, people in the Hornet community, you all know me, and I'm telling you now, learn how to use a crosswalk. Don't cut the middle of the street when there's a car coming by. Boom, you're gonna get hit. And everybody here is just sitting up here saying, I said no jaywalking. One person says, hey, they need more crosswalks. Not on Purdue. There's one on the corner of Purdue and Waldron, and one on the corner of Flybelow Drive in Purdue. It's not just a speed issue, slow down issue. I can't people walking behind or between cars. I understand why people cross there. It's not safe and it slows the flow of traffic. Purdue needs a crosswalk right in front of the school with a guard like they do up and down Hustler Corner. Traffic will change, but no one is going to walk the way to Waldron to cross over and then walk back to the school. I'm a kindergarten ride the bus because my third child and I don't want to deal with that kind of frustration. Yeah, it's so frustrating, even and then why they wonder why children don't listen. Look at the parents. One person said, I've been fighting this for a couple of years now. Last year I almost hit someone twice. Also known as the Az that can't wait to go on the wrong way down Hudson Corner. Going to start sitting out there in the mornings and afternoons videoing the idiots. Well, good luck. You're welcome to post it on Give Me a Break. I was told to go around the wrong side of the street. All the people were waiting to go to intermediate to get junior high by the FBIC Police Department. One person said, well, the FBIC Police Department, who are controlling the traffic in the incidents, are not the case coming out of the Waldron Hustler Hornet, where people get impatient and just go their own accord. I've seen it done numerous times. Stupid as stupid does, people need mental check. And I put on the comments saying, hey, no jaywalking. They do that all the time. Too far to use a crosswalk. Okay, there's a crosswalk at the corner of Waldron and Purdue. That's a crosswalk you use. It's just, you push a button, wait for the walk sign, and say walk sign, and you walk. It's not that simple. I don't want to do that. It's too fun. I'm going to just jaywalker. No jaywalking. It is illegal. You cross at the crosswalk. When I walk across the street, I stop at the corner. I cross at the corner. You can't cross at the crosswalk. You see these crosswalks? The city spent over $30,000 to keep you and me safe. The city spent a lot of money to keep you and me safe. And I can't have that on my conscience. I can't have people in this community get hit by a car. Every man, woman, and child. Respect the process going on. You're picking kids from ECC, learn how to use a crosswalk. You know how to? Well, you need to learn. If we have to do a part 2 special with that person, then hell, maybe we need to do it next week. Because really, y'all don't know all about jaywalking. We do have that special up, part 1 on the jaywalking, and we need to do a part 2 because nobody here understands jaywalking. Maybe we need to. The message needs to get out. Crossing guards here in the Bluff, you're not doing your jobs. Do better. Do better. I mean, you guys work for the district. I mean, talk to the school board and say, hey, you need to put out more crossing guards. Or maybe just put in more crosswalks. There's 2 crosswalks. The corner of Waldron and Purdue that goes straight to the taco stand, and you go the other way around. And there's one that goes right across the street, we go to the church. That's the crosswalk. Look, I've been focusing on jaywalking ever since. And at the end of the show, I tell people stop blaming concentration, not strength, no jaywalking. But this is just too big to take the cake here, and I think we really need to do a part 2 about jaywalking because we've missed the mark with this post. And I would love for this person to come on and tell her story because it needs to get out there. That's all for this edition of Give Me a Break Friday. We'll see you again for Give Me a Break Saturday night. For all of us here at YouTube, and Give Me a Break, stop bullying, speak up, concentration, not strength. And I urge you guys, no jaywalking. It is illegal and it can get you fined. Actually, it's legal in California, but in other states, it's illegal. In Texas, it's against the law. Like, people are like, we don't care. Jaywalking is illegal in Texas, considered a Class C misdemeanor, which will result in $200. However, there are some exceptions to the law, which is strict traffic, working in a construction zone, or emergency situations. It's illegal. Section 552.002 of the Transportation Code. You don't like the law? Well, tough luck. You need to use the crosswalk. For all of us here, and again, I hate jaywalking. That's Give Me a Break for this Friday. We'll see you again for Give Me a Break Saturday. For everyone here at YouTube, Give Me a Break. Stop bullying, speak up. Concentration, not strength. No jaywalking. Good night.